Today on City Cast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup, and this week I'm joined by City Cast Madison's Hayley Sperling. Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul filed charges against 3 Trump allies for forgery in the 2020 fake elector scheme. Special parking prices in downtown Madison garages are going up, and several controversies between parents and school district authorities are going down. It's Friday, June 7th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Welcome to the Friday News Roundup. And I've been watching Bridgerton, the scrumptious TV show based in fictionalized 1800s England that covers the highly competitive social season. And I want to steal a line from that show and say that there are folks, political and public players in our area, that are courting scandal. It is hot. It is scandalous. Things are going on. Am I wrong, Hayley?
Oh, you are so right. You are so right. We've got scandals. We've got excitement. We don't have as much glamour. That's what we're missing.
We're missing the glamour for sure. Hayley, thank you for joining me for this Friday News Roundup. You are the leader of this podcast and our newsletter editor. How are you feeling this week?
We're feeling great. I'm feeling busy. There's a lot of news to get into, so we can dive right into it all.
Right. Speaking of scandals, I am kicking off this week with felony charges here in our state. This is a step by the Wisconsin Department of Justice, led by our Attorney General, Josh Kaul. He filed criminal charges for forgery against 3 of Trump's allies, attorney Jim Troupis, Kenneth Chesebro, and a Trump aide, Mike Roman, who allegedly helped submit false paperwork saying that Donald Trump won Wisconsin in 2020. So, as a reminder, this is a part of the fake elector scheme, and this is a nationwide conversation, and there are multiple states who have already filed charges against folks who are part of this larger scheme. Wisconsin, this is just their first charges that they're putting forward, but, other swing states, including Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, and Georgia, have also filed charges against people who are alleged to have been a part of trying to overturn the 2020 election in favor of Donald Trump. So who are these folks who are getting charged here in the state? Jim Troupis, he was Trump's attorney in Wisconsin. Kenneth Chesebro was advising the campaign. And Mike Roman was Trump's director of Election Day operations. All 3 are due in Dane County Circuit Court on September 19th, each facing 1 felony count punishable by up to 6 years in prison and fines of up to $10,000. Mike Roman is alleged to have delivered Wisconsin's fake electors' paperwork to a Pennsylvania congressman staffer to get them to then Vice President Mike Pence on January 6, 2021. It's a messy scene, and there's already been a civil lawsuit that was settled, where the 10 Wisconsin electors, Chesebro and Troupis, all settled a civil lawsuit last year related to this. And so folks have been asking, what does this mean about the 10 Wisconsin electors? Attorney Kaul hasn't said whether or not he will be bringing charges against them, but that the investigation is ongoing into the false elector scheme. And so it is still possible that charges might come down the pike for the 10 false electors. But this is a pretty big story for the state. Some of these names, these Trump allies, have already been charged in other states. For instance, Chesebro and Roman were among 18 people indicted along with Trump in August for a racketeering indictment in Georgia. Chesebro has already pleaded guilty to 1 felony charge in Georgia of conspiracy to commit filing false documents. And Roman has pleaded not guilty to racketeering and conspiracy charges in Georgia, but they are facing a lot of legal issues and now criminal charges.
This is a lot to take in. This is a lot to keep up with. There are so many moving parts and so many little details that are very confusing. It's crazy to me that it's 2024. We're officially at the halfway point of 2024. It's June and we're still talking about the 2020 election. My God, I'm so ready for it to be done. I'm glad that things are happening and that things are moving. Of course, like you said, like the fake electors have already sort of like copped to what they did, right? Like they already have settled this civil case and like fessed up essentially to what happened. And now we just keep going. We just keep marching on. And hopefully, like, I don't know if there are any winners or losers in this situation. I don't really know what the implication is going to be. I think it just is going to make the job of our local election officials harder. Will this give people more trust in our election system? I don't know. These are the things that I'm thinking about. And also, like, is Donald Trump going to have to like show up at this case like from his own prison cell? Like, there's just so much.
And thinking about the timing here, of course, former President Donald Trump was just charged. He was found guilty for 34 felonies. Of course, a different issue back in the 2016 presidential election about concealing information around Stormy Daniels from the public.
Yeah.
But it's a moment of thinking like, hey, folks, if you took part in forgery or helping forgery and getting falsified documents to the vice president of the United States to say that somebody won an election that did not win the election, that is forgery, and you are going to pay for your actions. You will be held accountable.
That's so true. As I love to say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I saw a U.S. Senator, Republican Ron Johnson, said that this filing of these felony charges for forgery were outrageous, that, quote, now Democrats are weaponizing Wisconsin's judiciary. I think that's the big conversation in general across the country, certainly in Wisconsin, looking at our judicial system through political lenses. That is an ongoing discussion, but also, as you said, people have already copped to certain things. People have been found guilty in other places related to this scheme. So we'll find out what happens. It's an ongoing investigation, as our Attorney General said, and we'll be following it. And before we dive into more news, let's take a quick break. Y'all, there is a truly special opportunity coming this month. The Harry Whitehorse International Wood Sculpture Festival is running from June 14th through the 22nd, and it's a first-of-its-kind week-long celebration of contemporary and traditional wood sculpture and indigenous culture. It's named after the world-renowned Ho-Chunk sculptor and painter who lived in Monona, the late Harry Whitehorse, and it will be hosted at the iconic San Damiano Park right on the shores of Lake Monona. The fest is inviting 12 international sculptors from countries like Peru, Germany, Ukraine, and more for a week-long artisan residence. And it will host demonstrations of live sculpture and Ho-Chunk arts and crafts, such as black ash basketry, porcupine quill art, and finger weaving. Plus, they've got live music and food. Plan your visit and learn more at harrywhitehorse.com/festival. Kids are our future, right? And we all want to make sure that future is bright. That's why making sure that their bodies, minds, and characters are strong. Luckily, KidStrong coming to Sun Prairie might just be the answer. KidStrong is a national franchise that uses a science-based training program that focuses on character, physical, and brain development through weekly 45-minute age-based classes. And a pair of Sun Prairie parents are opening a new KidStrong location at Prairie Lake Shopping Center. Instruction is led by world-class certified coaches, and kids are taught everything from the importance of shaking hands to how to do a pull-up correctly. And 77% of parents in the program credit KidStrong with boosting their children's self-confidence. Interested? You can call or text 608-369-8866 or visit their social media at KidStrong Sun Prairie to learn more. The program opens in the next few weeks, and you can save money by registering today. We're going to park that, the big story in this state about the fake electors scheme and the lawsuit there. But speaking of parking, there's some changes in our parking landscape in Madison.
There's some changes afoot. Yeah, let's dive back into local Madison news. Get ready to pay more for parking around town if you've got a special event coming up. The city has announced recently that special event parking rates at popular downtown parking garages and near the Sylvie are going to see a price increase starting in July. So, for context, this is not your regular everyday like 9 to 5 parking. Like that stuff is still the same right now. This is just for special events. So like when there's a concert at the Sylvie, when there's a show at the Overture Center, when there are like massive amounts of people coming in and out of a specific place, that is a special event. That's what we're talking about. And so the city's Transportation Commission recently voted to increase the cost at several of these downtown parking garages, like I mentioned. So starting July 1st, the State Street campus and South Livingston garages, the South Livingston is right near the Sylvie, will cost $15 for special event parking. And for context, the parking for special events at those lots used to cost, well, it still does at this moment, $8. And the last time that the special event rate was increased was in 2016 when it went from $5 to $8. So it's a big jump for those two garages, the State Street campus and South Livingston. It's almost doubling their cost. Meanwhile, the Capitol Square North, Overture Center, State Street Capitol, and Wilson Street garages will see a $2 increase for special event parking. So those will go from $8 to $10. And again, this starts July 1st. You got a little time to sit with this change. Change is hard, I know. But
yeah.
Why
but
the
we've
change?
gotten used we've been getting used to things costing more because of inflation and
exactly.
what have you.
100%. I mean, you're hitting the nail right on the head. So like, why the change? Well, according to Cap Times reporting, the increases are meant to raise money to offset the growing cost. As you mentioned, Bianca, everything costs more, to maintain staff, to maintain the garages, as well as provide technology updates and facility updates in these garages, because the city hasn't had the money to do that in a very long time. And also, have we mentioned that we're kind of facing a budget crisis here? You know,
I think we touched on it. Yeah,
I think we did. I think we got at least a podcast or two that you can go listen to if you have no idea what we're talking about. If you've been living under a rock.
Also, rocks are awesome. So if you're under the rock, we're not shaming you.
No shame for the rock people. So overall, I mean, personally, I know I have been on record saying that parking rate increases are a good thing. And then I get to the parking garage and I'm like, when did this cost so much?
That was hilarious. Yeah, we were like, I remember being like, I'm grumpy about it. And you're like, come on, girl, that's what it needs to happen. And then we were like out walking and you were like, I can't believe it. I went there. I could have, it was sticker shock. But it's not really sticker, but kind of.
But again, it's like, okay, you know, I said it and I'm standing by it, right? Like, it's an unfortunate aspect, but also, as we mentioned, we're a growing city, we're a changing city, we're attracting a lot of people that are bringing a lot of money into this city and people that can afford to pay for it. So overall, I see this as a good thing, as a decent way for the city to kind of collect on some of the fees that it needs to in order to maintain a balanced budget. But with all of that said, there are a lot of really valid concerns from community members surrounding equity and accessibility over this change. So one of those examples comes from the Arts and Lit Laboratory, which is right on South Livingston Street, directly across from the South Livingston garage, where the prices are nearly doubling from $8 to $15. And so Arts and Lit Lab, they said like, hey, you know, like we put on a lot of free events for the community and we're worried that our audience won't be able to come to these events anymore because they can't pay for parking. One of the co-directors of the Arts and Lit Lab noted that there's also like no street parking spaces available accessible for people with disabilities, which is a huge thing to note. They said, quote, "We do everything we can to make people feel welcome and make it accessible. If they pull up to the parking garage and they have to pay $15 for a free event, I can guarantee you they will not feel welcome." So that's a very valid concern. And, I'm wondering if there's like exceptions that the city could make, or like if there's ways that like the city could work out a deal with the Arts and Lit Lab specifically, because again, they do so much good work and it's so valid, and I'm happy that they're bringing up these concerns. Can they get a pass on parking fees? Can hint hint Live Nation cover some of these fees, right? That's what I'm looking for. How do we balance the needs of our community with the needs of the city? It's a question that the city is constantly battling, and I'm interested to see what'll come up. And maybe there could be some grant opportunities for, folks that are like specifically putting on free events. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. If anyone from the city or the Transportation Commission is listening, these are really valid concerns. Again, I'm pro people paying their dues. I am thankfully someone who has the means to be able to pay $15 for parking for a special event when I need to. But that's not the case for everyone. And it's important that everyone feels welcome and feels like they have access to the amenities of our city.
And what a friggin' contrast is that Arts and Lit Lab right next to the Sylvie. I mean, the Sylvie's also really awesome for bringing in big boom boom acts like Chapel Roan, where you are getting, some of the nation's best acts and bigger acts. But guess what? Our local acts are super important as well. Right. And I have happily and thoroughly enjoyed a number of impressive events at Arts and Lit Laboratory. I'm glad that you brought that up, Hayley.
Yeah, it's a really special space. And again, these changes are moving forward. It doesn't have to go through city council for any sort of approval. This is going to go into effect on July 1st. So make a note on your calendar.
So in other news, school district drama is having a moment this week. We've got news from my hometown school district, Baraboo, Wisconsin, unfortunately. That's, about 45 minutes north of us. Home of the Al Ringling Circus. We are no strangers to putting on a good show or courting scandal. But I don't think this is the kind of show the school district really wants to have. And now it's gone viral. So when I'm talking about the story during Baraboo's high school graduation, Baraboo School Superintendent Rainey Briggs was accosted by a disgruntled father of a graduating student. And in the middle of the ceremony, the father, whose name is now out as Matthew Eddy, got on stage to seemingly physically try to stop the superintendent from shaking his daughter's hand. Briggs has since filed a restraining order against the father, and this father has been charged also with disorderly conduct. So outside of disruptive and inappropriate behavior amongst adults, why did this go viral? Well, Briggs was the only Black person on the stage amidst an all-white staff lined up to congratulate the students. Cue the rise in racist hate in the U.S., normalized racist rhetoric in our politics, the history of white Americans not wanting to mix socially with Black people, not share pools, drinking fountains, or schools. Yeah, so it's being called out as a racist incident by onlookers and people online. And by others, hey, this has nothing to do with race. This is a personal issue that this dad, Eddie, had beef with Briggs as a leader, as a person. Speaking right now, we don't know why or the intention behind Eddie trying to stop his daughter or stop the superintendent from from shaking his daughter's hand. But it's caused just a huge reaction. And it's also causing such a reaction likely because Baraboo High School has recent history. There's the moment in 2018 of national shame, frankly, after a huge group of Baraboo High School juniors posed before their prom in front of the town's courthouse doing a Nazi salute. Everyone remembers that. And if you don't, you can easily look it up. It's a really horrible time for Baraboo because it was this national spotlight for a very dark moment. I remember I was approached by reporters back then to get my experience as, a former alumnus of Baraboo High School. So with that as the backdrop, people are really outraged at what they saw in the optics. Our own Wisconsin State Representative Francesca Hong said on X, formerly Twitter, that, quote, no one should have to endure this type of gross and racist misconduct. So, the school board did condemn the father's actions. They said, quote, we understand that there are many folks who care deeply about the education of students and who come together with different understandings and ideas on how to best provide that education. We value the civil discourse that allows us to have conversations about those ideas. That's at the cornerstone of our democracy. What we don't want is to condone engaging and threatening, intimidating, or physically harming behaviors against anyone in our school district. So it's a mess, and people are upset, and there are a lot of conclusions being drawn, but some just straight up from the video. From where I'm standing, personally, I'd say, hey, don't put your hands on somebody else. Even if the action has nothing to do with his race, the way people are saying that it has something to do with his leadership and him as a person, there are always racial dynamics present. And we are not in a colorblind society. We are not post-racial. And there is a history of white people legally having entitlement to manage Black bodies. And this father, he grabbed the superintendent and started escorting him, while the superintendent was doing his job, away from his daughter. So the superintendent is the person in charge of the district. So the assumption of authority over him and then physically moving him, it just looks really bad.
Right. I think you bring up a good point, right? It's like, on its face, this can look like a very racist incident. It seems like there's also perhaps something had been brewing between this specific parent and the school district in general. But your bigger point still stands, right? There's a lot of power dynamics that need to be taken into account when looking at this situation. It's like the same thing into don't touch a Black person's hair. It's just don't put your hands on someone else's body. It's just not appropriate. And, in Madison, too, we're dealing with some issues with school administrators as well. There is some big news coming out of the South Side School where a group of more than 60 parents have filed a complaint with the Madison Metropolitan School District against their principal and assistant principal, saying that they are unfit to lead the school. Once again, according to Cap Times reporting, the district has now hired a Madison-based employment law firm to look into the complaints. So they're taking this seriously because these allegations are very serious. And among the allegations, this group of parents, and they wrote a complaint that is dozens of pages long. They have very detailed information. The Cap Times has all of that linked in their reporting. But among the allegations, these parents say that the administrators deployed harsh and exclusionary discipline that included things like pulling kids out of class for up to a month at a time, or putting kids in special buddy classes where they were not getting actual instruction. And the thing to note about Southside Elementary is that over 70% of the school's 350 students identify as Black or Latino. And so the complaints that these parents are bringing up said that many of these students that are being punished are children of color. So there's a lot to take in there. Also among the allegations is that the principal and assistant principal had retaliated against anyone who spoke out against them, which led to staff members quitting, which is probably the worst possible outcome that we could have while we were still in a teacher shortage. The Madison School District is still not fully staffed. And so this is an unfolding story that we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on, and that the school district itself is investigating. Shout out to Cap Times. They've done a lot of really great reporting on this. And God, it's just, it's a hard time. It's a hard time to be in the school system. The politicalization of schools is just, it's a hard issue to deal with, right?
Yeah, and this is also a week where the Milwaukee superintendent resigned after folks called for him to step down about how the school district is managed, saying that they need more transparency and accountability. So, the schools are feeling it, feeling the heat, and people, parents, teachers, it's across the board. And so how do people handle each other, responsibly and professionally, and not in racist ways, not in lacking tact and thought? We need to keep being the adults in the room across the board.
Yeah, I think just take care of each other. Look out for each other. We're all in this together, right? To quote the famous High School Musical. But it's so true. We really are. Like, we're all in this community together. Kids go to school together. Like, we all just need to look out for each other and be open to listening to each other, right? That's the biggest thing. So if there's one thing you can take with us from this conversation, it's just listen to people. Listen to people when they're talking to you, when they make a point, and especially if you don't agree with that point, and truly try and hear them out, because that's where we grow. That's where we change. That's where the magic happens, when we come together and collaborate. And there's a lot of that going on in our city. I got a lot of hope for us.
Hayley, love being in this with you. Thank you so much for rounding up the news this week with me.
Thanks, Bianca.
That was Hayley Sperling, our executive producer. And before you go, one piece of great news. Y'all nominated us for Madison Magazine's Best of Madison contest for 2024. Thank you, seriously. So now we're up for the categories of Best Local Podcast and Best Local News Website for our newsletter, Madison Minutes. We cannot thank you enough. We are so grateful. And hey, the final voting round is now open. So if you want to go vote for us, you can today. And please do. Vote us Best of Madison. Make your voices heard. We'll drop that link to the voting website in our show notes. Please and thank you. That's all for today here on City Cast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. We're produced by Phil Circus, Elizabeth Kama, and Natalie Rivera. Hayley Sperling is both our executive producer and newsletter editor. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. You can get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with a downtown parking garage attendant? All right, see you back here Monday morning with more stories from around the city. Ciao.